It all started now. This day's a turning point in my life. The day I begin living my life from the inside out. And I am transformed. I am transformed.
Theo Tilton, our returning guest today, is an international best-selling author and mindset transformation coach. His book has been seen on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and more. His mission is to help clients like you design and manifest a life that's in harmony with your soul's purpose. He is a podcast creator and an international best-selling author of the book Practice Method, 30-Day Blueprint for Living Your Extraordinary Life.
My name is Maria Markovich, and I'm your host for Family Today. And here is my guest, Theo Tilton. Welcome,
Hi.
Theo. Welcome.
Hi, nice to see you again, Maria. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show again.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. And congratulations on your book. It's outstanding.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So what's the method that you use for your book?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's the practice method.
Yes.
And it's a 30-day blueprint for living your extraordinary life. And what the practice method is, it's an 8-step blueprint that takes you on a 30-day journey to living an extraordinary life. And it reveals this blueprint in such a way that you get to discover the design that's within you by default and how we use it by default. This blueprint exists in everybody. So it doesn't matter what your sexuality is, it doesn't matter what your race is, your color, your religion, it doesn't matter. This blueprint exists inside of everyone. And it was, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring forth something where everybody had this common element and reveal, and that's why it's a 30-day journey. So on this 8-step process over 30 days, I reveal 24 different tools to discover something from within yourself. And that's what the practice method is. Yeah.
So what made you write this book, Theo?
Yeah. Well, I've been on, similar to you, I've been on a spiritual journey for a very long time. And I would say 15, 17 years now, something like that. And, I've spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 on personal growth and development. And inside of all of that training, inside of all of the weekends and the workshops and the seminars and the courses and the books, which so many of us who are on this path do, I discovered this blueprint. There was something common that existed amongst several of these themes inside of these books and journeys and meditations and all kinds of tools. And I'd said to myself, why does someone have to spend $250,000 to go through 80 different courses to figure all this stuff out? And I happen to also be a life coach. And I wanted to be able to deliver something that could get right in the hands of a reader that would effectively give them all of the tools that I've learned myself, that I use on my clients, that I use in teams of people, or if I'm presenting on a stage, all of this content. Now, I didn't put everything, there is probably another dozen different tools that I have in my back pocket, but I wanted to give what I felt was the most effective delivery, and that was to write a book and have it be a 30-day journey. And the reason why I did that was because, historically we know that it takes a certain amount of time for old habits to break down. And it also takes another certain amount of time for new habits to flourish and to take hold in our life. And so introducing brand new material every single day over a 30-day period gives the reader the ability to pull something into their life and then practice it. That's why it's called the practice.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Beautiful. It's definitely. Now you say something about, we create either by design or default. So what do you mean by that? You just explained some of it, or maybe you could share a little more, expand on it more. For example, I say that we live on automatic pilot, meaning we do things unautomatically. And I think by design, we really create our true self or true life that we want. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, here's something to try something on for size. And this is for everybody watching this. And that is to understand that when we're born, we're basically an empty vessel where we're in this space, a being of nothingness, really. And then through the indoctrination of parenting and school and religion and all the different modalities, traumas, things that occur in our life, circumstances, events, triggers, all of this stuff begins to wire the brain. And the brain is uniquely equipped to map all of this information. So if we begin to see patterns in our life, it becomes a prediction engine. So our brain begins to predict what's going to happen to us or what's going to happen in this scenario or this situation. And that's by default. Our brain is designed that way. It's been like that since the beginning of time. And primarily that function really has been there to protect us, to have us be survivors. Like, we protect ourselves, we survive, we protect our families, we survive, the species keeps moving forward. But guess what? There's no more bears and well, if you live in the woods, that's a little different. But like, there's no more bears and tigers and mammoths and dinosaurs chasing us. So we don't have to use that mechanism in the brain anymore. And what we discover is this is on autopilot. Like this learning mechanism is inside of us and it's automatic. And these patterns are automatic. And so I'll just reveal some of this stuff inside of that's in the blueprint. So on day one, you learn about practices. What is it that you practice? Do you hear the alarm clock and you happen to practice hitting the snooze button 3 times before you actually get out of bed? That's a practice. We may not realize it is, but it is. And we do it every single day, or then after we do that, we get up and like, I can't do anything unless I have my coffee. So these are like habitual ways of being that have happened by default. Now, when we become conscious of the things that we do regularly, and like I said, there's 24 tools. There's practice, there's possibility, there's promising. How do we promise to ourselves and others? There's responsibility, realization. So there's all these very distinct tools, and we use them all of the time by default. We don't even know we're using them. So, for instance, promises. How many times have you witnessed or experienced someone promising something to you, but then it doesn't happen? So the way it unfolds from that person to you, that's a habitual way of being. Chances are, if they are a person who breaks their promises, they probably do that all over the place. They probably do it in every single area of their life. And how does that apply to us? Well, we probably do it too. Like, how many times have we promised something and we failed to deliver, and then we get embarrassed, and we're like, what? Wait, I can't even talk to that person anymore. Oh my gosh, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And then we're in this mindset of being sorry and upset and all of these things. And then there's the type of promise where we're promising ourselves, I'm not going to touch sugar for the rest of the year. I'm committing that I'm not going to eat fat or fried foods. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, "Nom, nom, 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 nom." So you break the promise.
Yeah. So why does that happen? I'm curious to know that one. That I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are struggling with. So
Yeah.
tell me that happens.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how when we're born, we're an empty vessel, and the brain is malleable. It takes on the patterns.
Yes, but
So
say something to yourself that you're gonna, for example, stay on a particular diet, and then after 5 days you drop it. What happens when you drop it? You know it now, you're conscious, you're beginning to practice it, but after 5 days you drop it. What happens in that linear of time? What happens?
yeah, well, there's a gravity. So your old way. So pretend there's two people, right?
Yes.
There's person A, which is the way you were, like eating pizza and cheeseburgers and French fries and sugar and sweet. And then you say, no, I'm going to be person B. I'm going to eat more salad. I'm going to eat. So we're developing this second person, and that person exists. As soon as we create it, that person exists, right?
Mhm.
Now, what happens is person A, the first version of you, there's a gravity to you, because that gravity is created by the habits. It's created by the practices, the ways of being that we've always been. And so when we try to break a habit, when we try to say no more cheeseburgers and no more French fries and no more pizza, I'm going to eat salad, at some point the gravity of the burger and the pizza and the French fries start to pull you back, right? It says, no, you try again tomorrow, have the pizza. So there's this process by which I'm declaring who I'm going to be. I'm going to start to practice it. And then the old way of being pulls you right back.
Mhm.
And the reason why that happens, I think that's what you're getting to, is why does that happen?
Mhm.
And that's because we do not sufficiently, I call it existence structures. It's in the last chapter of the book, E. So in the existence, we don't effectively put in something existing so that we know that that's going to happen. If we know that there's a gravity to the old way, and if we put a structure in place, like every time I feel the urge to go get a cheeseburger, what I'm going to do is get a liter of water and drink it. I'm going to go out for a walk. So as soon as the urge happens, if we don't put in a mechanism to fill the gap of the information, that gravity is always going to pull us back. It's always going to attract you back to the familiar, which is your old way. And this is why people get stuck. Sometimes they'll lose, and then when they gain it back, they gain back and even more, because there's a comfort in the familiar. Inside of that gravity, inside that pull, there's a comfort in it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's the reason.
I think there's more years to the old than the new. I
Yeah.
think, and that could be too the part that wins the old behavior, for
Yes,
example.
because these patterns have been burned into the mind, right? And there's
Mhm.
actually I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly what happens, but there's the neurotransmitters and neural pathways, and they literally are like circuit boards. Like they
Mhm.
map the brain. And there's a saying in self-development, personal development, transformation that says, things that wire together fire together, or things that fire together wire together, right? So what happens is that there's a familiar pattern, and the brain says, wait a minute, this feels like this, and it snaps it onto your network in your brain, and it says, okay, this is what I'm going to expect. This is what I'm going to do. When I do this, I know the outcome. So like I said earlier, the brain is a prediction machine. It tries to predict what's going to happen. And it knows that if you keep doing the salads and you keep doing this, it's unfamiliar. It doesn't map to something that you've done in the past. And so because it's a brand new thing, it doesn't know what to do. So how do you create, how do you do this successfully? And that is to
being strong in that moment of, going back.
Yeah.
How do you be strong? That's even with the addiction processes, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing. And that's a touchy subject that requires expertise, but there's a similar, there is a similar mechanism.
Yes, I touched on it because it is similar with the addiction process. Anything, really.
Yeah.
What you're saying is could count for this too. But go ahead, excuse me.
No, it's okay. So the secret to it is that if we know that this exists, if we know that this is how the brain works, is if we know consciousness, like if we consciously know, oh, my brain is taking this traumatic event that triggers emotional eating, I know that that's what happens to me. Like, so if you know what the brain, how it's mapped and how it works, you can effectively put something in its place. So when the emotional trauma or the trigger happens, you have a brand new thing that you could substitute in its place, and you can start to remap and rewire those same signals. So if you say, I'm going to go out for a walk, instead of grabbing a piece of candy, I'm going to go out for a 5-minute walk. And so your brain will begin to re-network those circuits. And then you start to build a brand new habit, especially if you do it for more than 30 days. If you keep doing that over and over and over again, eventually that old you will start to disappear. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I could definitely identify with that. But
that's what I call by design. So in the book, I'd share, you are using this blueprint by default, or you're going to use it by conscious design. So you get to choose. Do I want myself to hijack me? Or now that I know this information, how can I effectively use the information to bring about change, transformation, completely live a brand new life?
And I feel that, Theo, thank you. That was such a beautiful explanation. That when people are vulnerable, when they're in a space that is, they're a little bit toxic in that space, or that they're not really going to go through that design.
Yeah.
So what would you say to those people that are craving for, like I said before, drug, and that's a whole different topic, but I'm going to use that to make an example. So what would you say to that, like that moment when you want that burger, that moment when you don't want the new design, and it's, I don't know, you feel, I went through a lot of this stuff. That's why I could understand that. So what would you say to those people that are in that space?
Get my book.
Yes.
No, I'm joking. So
it helps. That definitely helps.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And just getting reminded.
Yeah. What I would say is don't beat yourself up. Number one, do not beat yourself up. Like, it's not your fault. Your whole entire mechanism of living has been designed that way to survive. And so what you're doing is surviving. So like we are designed to survive, but in the background of all of that, the truth of who we are is that we are designed to thrive. We're designed to thrive.
Yes.
And what's riding on top of the thriving mechanism is the survival mechanism. So when we, are in those scenarios, it's really about noticing what you're noticing. So that's the second piece, is notice what you're doing. And I talk about this a lot in the book. Like almost every single chapter, I say, notice what you're noticing. I'm talking to you about this particular tool right now. Notice what you're noticing when I'm sharing it with you. And you'll begin to see patterns that have shown up your entire life. And when you become consciously aware and you notice it, you have the ability right in that moment. The moment that you notice, you have the ability to choose differently.
Mhm.
If you don't, it's just going to run on autopilot. It's just going to keep running on autopilot. But if you are opening up the fridge and you're like, oh, wait, what just happened? I'm being emotional. I'm emotional. Oh, so you notice it. You have a choice. Yeah,
It's a
now
lot.
you have a choice. What am I going to choose here?
Mhm.
And some of us, hey, it's okay. Like I said, don't beat yourself up. If you put something in and you're like, I want to satisfy this right now. Like, okay, but notice it. As soon as you notice it, you have the ability to become more powerful, to own your power. And then at least in that scenario, when you notice it, here's the key. At least in that scenario, because you're noticing it, you have claimed your power back.
Yes, for sure. That's good.
Because you're choosing it, knowing where it's coming from.
Mhm.
And that's very powerful. It's like, hey, no, I'm choosing to have this right now. I want it.
Mhm.
I'm just choosing it. That's it.
I would say even to have you as a life coach, when you have this book, when you have that time of space of toxicity, or you're not yourself, or you're vulnerable to your addictions, food, whatever, they might want to call you and speak to you.
Yeah.
And I think that will help tremendously. I really believe that. I believe if you pick up the phone and call somebody, that will give you that strength to go on the new path, on the awareness path, that will help. It will
Yeah.
help.
It takes
Sure.
courage.
It
It
takes
takes
also both too.
desire and courage. It's like, I'm desiring a change.
Mhm.
We say that there's these two indicators of growth. We're beings of expansion. Like the universe, we are made in the image and likeness of the source energy itself. And that source energy is always expanding. So that's our nature. Our nature is to expand and grow all the time.
Yes.
And when we harness that, and we grow the mind, we grow the body, we grow the soul, we keep using expansion inside of our own life, then it starts to reveal a new path. It starts to reveal that to us. And you're right. I went through the same journey. 29 years. I can't believe it's almost 30 years. 29 years ago, I lost 128 pounds, and I've kept off about 100 of that, about 100 of those pounds, which is a pretty
Wow.
significant amount. I've kept that off for 29 years.
Wow.
So, and a lot of it had to do with reprogramming, like reprogramming what it is that I do. All that. Now, I love cheeseburgers and French fries and pizza and cannolis and all kinds of stuff. And but I understand I have a method, and like, okay, I'm not going to deny myself, but I'm doing it consciously, specifically. There's things that I've set up in my life, cheat days, or whatever. And sometimes that breaks down. Sometimes the old me sucks me right back, and I'm like, and that's okay. But as soon as I notice it, boom, I can make a new choice. I can stop. Yeah. And that's the message I would tell any client.
Very nice. So do you have any stories in the book? I think you have some stories. I didn't complete the book yet. I'm still reading your book. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories?
Well, in the book, I share a lot of my personal stories. I also share client stories, where people were struggling, through me sharing my story about wanting to leave corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
and, becoming a coach, in fact, becoming an author, and all of that was set up, as a vision in my life. And so that's what I teach as a coach, is vision. Like, what is your vision? um, I had this one client who went through a horrible divorce, was on the East Coast, was almost lost her mom to cancer, lost her job. Like, all these scenarios were like just bulldozing through her life, and she was like, "What is going on?" And after working with her, now I've been working with her for 2 years, and we went through this method. The creating a brand new possibility in your life, being responsible for who it is. What kind of actions are you going to take?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't noticed, these are letters. The word practice, PRACTICE, is an acronym for all of the steps inside of the program. And when she began to do this, here it is now 2 years later, the vision that she created for herself was that she wanted to work as an executive admin to a very powerful man who was changing the world, right? And through a series of tools and practices and working with me, she moved to California. She moved to the West Coast, got some random jobs. And then over the last year, out of nowhere, she started to change her questioning, because part of this process in the practice method is contemplation questions. And Bob Proctor, the late Bob Proctor, and Mary Morrissey, and a few others say this in their teachings, and they say the quality of your life shows up in the quality or the potency of the questions that you ask in your life.
Sure.
So if you're asking really low caliber questions, you're going to get really low caliber answers. If that's where this client was. She was saying, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to make the rent and my insurance? And so it was like, I wouldn't call it victimization, although it was teeter-tottering on victimization, but it was really about the quality of the question that she was asking. And I got her to change the question. And I was like, well, what if your question was, how do I work for a very powerful company making an impact all over the world, making a six-figure income near the beach on the West Coast? Like, that's a different question. That's a different question than saying, how am I going to make my bills?
Mm-hmm.
And the positioning of that question, the answer is actually in the question. See, by talking about bills and mortgages and rent and insurance and you're focusing on the lowest level thing. But by bringing your question over to this higher level design, move to the West Coast, I'm going to have my best, my dream loft, dream loft apartment. I'm going to have my dream car. I'm going to have my dream job. That inside of that questioning, it actually points to the idea that you've already solved your problems.
Mm-hmm.
You've already solved how you pay your insurance. You've already solved how you pay your rent. You've already solved. So if you ask a question it's in the mind.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you ask a question that's beyond the answer, right? That goes past the thing that you're trying to do. And and this is a great thing for the viewers here. If there's a problem that you're facing right now in life, if you start to begin to ask questions that are beyond that thing getting solved, then the universe, your mind, will figure it all out.
As you're doing it,
it starts to spiral you upward.
Yeah.
and that's one of the stories I share, amongst probably a dozen different stories that I share in the book. And I lay out specifically what happened to them and how they did it, and the tools that they were using. So yeah. Anything else? That's what I got.
Good. I congratulate you again on this book. And maybe we could do part 2 on the studio, Spectrum Studio.
Oh, I'd love that. That must be, that sounds exciting. I know that with all the stuff that's been happening over the past couple of years, things have been a little dicey, and we all just, living our lives, creating, and I would enjoy it. I would enjoy coming back into studio.
It was a pleasure speaking to you. I congratulate you, and this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you at Spectrum Studio, part 2.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our time together. It's been amazing. Thank you for sharing the platform with me. And go get the book.
Yeah, I do have it. I am working on it. So I'm going to close now, and I will thank you, dear viewers, for being here for us. And if you have any questions, please email me or see my website, www.familytoday.with.Maria.Mirkovich. And you, Theo, your website?
It's thepracticemethod.com. Real easy.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, and see you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
It all started now. This day's a turning point in my life.